Welcome everybody, and welcome to our panel. Thanks you guys for all taking the time and to join us and to come here and spend a little bit of time with us today. So we're going to talk about, as Tom said, the HPP packaging material and some of the trends in packaging, some of the how HPP or how packaging impacts HPP technology, and maybe touch on the sustainability of packaging a little bit as well. And so we've got three experts here that will give us a lot of good insight into the trends, into the future of packaging and some of the technologies. Our first panelist is Jeff Keller. He is CEO and president of VPET Plastics. Jeff's down on the end there. Our next panelist is Andy Brewer from Patanner Company, where he's the director of technical services. Andy. And in the middle here is Daniel Tien, founder of Tienovations, who also has a booth here, so you should go visit them sometime today or tomorrow. Just to give you a little bit of background on each, Jeff Keller, as I said, president and CEO of VPET. Jeff spent the majority of his career in packaging, spanning from flexible to protective and rigid packaging, both in the US and globally. Jeff's had multiple senior leadership positions in private equity packaging, and spent a lot of time helping companies grow and create value on the private equity side. He has a strong foundation of experience across leading global companies such as Tetra Pak, Miller Brewing, and Alcoa. And Jeff has a BS in food science from Penn State and an MBA from the University of North Carolina. Daniel has a background in civil and electrical engineering, maintains extensive experience in both international business and across the food packaging industry. Daniel is the founder of Tienovations, as I said earlier, and a leader in the food and medical packaging and bioplastics industries. Daniel assists in companies to help them leverage their technologies and products to become more eco-friendly, and has been a speaker at multiple events, including the Biopolymer Symposium, the Bioplastics Processing Conferences, Sustainability in Packaging, and that he's been at past Cold Pressure Council meetings as well. And Daniel has over 20 years of experience helping food companies maximize profits and successes by supporting shelf life strategies through technologies such as HPP. And our third panelist here, Andy. Andy has worked in the kegging industry since 1979. I hadn't met Andy before today, but when he walked by holding a keg, kind of gave me an indication that was probably Andy. So he obtained his engineering training with the Ministry of Defense in the UK, completing a 4-year apprenticeship in electronic and general engineering. Andy's obtained national certificates in engineering while studying at Bromley College of Technology. In 1979, Andy joined APV Burnett and Rolfe as a technician, where he installed kegging lines for breweries in Europe, North America, and Australia. And Andy has continued in the industry, acting as a consultant for most of the world's largest breweries, designing new equipment and engineering processes to increase throughput and reduce utility usage on existing lines. He helped design small keg washing and filling equipment for multiple microbrewery industries. And Andy currently works for Patanner Manufacturing as a technical director for the Americas. So again, thanks to all. So I thought what we do is just let each panelist here just give a brief introduction to their respective companies, just so you all are familiar with the companies they represent and the capabilities. So Jeff, if you'd like to jump in.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. Well, Tom and I have actually known each other since 1996, with the pleasure being here today. And, you know, I feel kind of ideally suited because of my background in food science and packaging. It's a kind of a good context of which to talk about HPP and the packaging that goes along with it. VPET is a blow molder of PET packaging. We have 4 locations in the US, about $100 million company. We're very pure play PET, that's all we do. And it's all 2-stage injection molding and blow molding and so forth. All of our plants are SQF certified. Really nice business. I run the company on behalf of Graham Partners, a private equity company that invested in the business in 2019. And we are growing very rapidly, having a hard time keeping up, as a matter of fact. But HPP is one of those key target segments where we know that there is growth and potential to to opportunities for us. And so we're engaged in both narrow neck and wide mouth applications in both of those, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later.
Thanks, Jeff. Daniel?
I want to say thank you to Tom and Universal Pure and Tom Egan as well, and his PMMI team and the Cold Pressure Council for having us. I apologize, I'm not wearing a tie today. I forgot it at the hotel room. I'm still learning to dress myself with the pandemic, but I did realize this isn't a Zoom conference, so at least I'm wearing pants.
You look great. Yeah.
I am the founder of Innovations, and what we do in short is we are a supplier of flexible and rigid packaging. We excel in those challenging projects, and the way that we have really grown our company is from those projects that folks have said it can't be done, it's impossible, or no one else will do it. We step up, we volunteer, we find a way, we figure a way, or we invent a way to solve the problem. And that's how we really got started in the HPP space. In its infancy, there was a lot of difficulty doing a flexible film seal on a rigid container, a lot of leakers, and a lot of problems. And so we stepped up, we learned, we figured out exactly what was happening, what causes issues, and we solved them. And so we have a booth here, North Hall downstairs, 9108, if you want to have a more in-depth discussion on anything we talked about too.
Thank you, Dan. And Andy.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Container is a manufacturer of PET containers, bottles, and water coolers and so forth. We've been around for well over 37 years. We've got a complete global presence. We have 2 blow molding facilities in North America, and we're starting a 3rd one, actually starting next week. About 20 years ago, we decided that we would like to get into the bulk market and into kegs. And since then, we are now the largest supplier of PET kegs. These are one-way kegs, and they come in various sizes from 10 litre, 15 litre, 20 litre, and 30 litre. And about 5 years ago, we started to get more involved with different products. We originally came out with the kegs for beer and then wine, and now we've got involved with cold brew coffee, kombucha, and lately with pressed juices and some of the almond milks and so forth. These products that we've got involved with require HPP, and we have partnered with Hyperbaric on this, and we found, surprisingly, but quite nicely, that our product does work with HPP. So that's why we're here today anyway. This is why our keg is here too. And basically, that's about it.
Good. Thank you, Andy. So we'll start off with a discussion here, and I'll direct each question at one of the panelists, but everybody, please feel free to expand as we go along. So Jeff, maybe I'll start with you with, what are some of your thoughts on the importance of high quality and compatible packaging and films when incorporating HPP technology into a brand's food production model?
For sure. Let me start with, I think that if you step back and take a look at kind of general consumer trends and the desire and the demand for variety, high quality, HPP as a process falls really well into that because, heat processing and, you get extended shelf life. And so the benefit of marrying that with PET from my standpoint has several real benefits to both the process as well as to the package and for consumers. First and foremost is that PET is absolutely clear. Number one, so you can see the product. It is completely transparent to the process as it relates to kind of the HPP process. So it goes through in a neutral fashion without any impact either on the package or on the product one way or the other on that. You know, it's customizable, it's designable. So you can create the container design very easily that kind of supports the brand and adapts to the HPP process in general. And last but not least, PET is the most recycled plastic in the world, and for the foreseeable future has a very bright future relative to what has to be improved recycling components from an industry standpoint. And then maybe even fourthly, we do a lot of rPET where we use recycled PET to actually make containers with, and there's absolutely no barriers relative to using that as part of the HPP process as well. So I really think it's a great combination, and we do it today for juice products in our narrow neck containers. We also do it for salsa and other more viscous products in our wide mouth containers.
Thanks. Daniel, what are some of the trends we're seeing in packaging innovation to support HPP technology? You know, new shapes, sizes, things like that.
Well, it sort of started with you just want something to work. And then once I think the industry has a handle on HPP compliant packaging, rigid packaging, flexibles, now we can start talking about different shapes. We can start pushing the envelope as far as what's possible. There are new shapes and sizes. A lot of advancement has been done with the flexible sides. And I say that because a lot of times it's the flexibles that make the rigid part work. You see a rigid container and maybe it goes through the HPP process and it cracks. And you're like, okay, there's a problem with my rigid container. Well, not necessarily. If the flexible packaging did its job, the rigid side wouldn't see necessarily the stresses that it does see. Mm-hmm. So you're almost solving the problem in a different way. So having the right lidding film, the right flexibles, might allow you to have even more options to choose from. Maybe some rigid packaging that you thought was not available for you to use. Like, okay, marketing loves that, but that'll never pass through HPP. Maybe that is something you can also rethink about now.
And Andy, maybe you can expand on that too, because I know, you know, you carrying your keg in here obviously opens some opportunities for more bulk size and different volumes with regards to HPP.
Yeah, the volume thing is very important to a lot of our customers, because we're, you know, from an environmental point of view, we have a number of customers who will package in bulk and then will dispense maybe at a supermarket or even a bar. Mm-hmm. And then they will put it into a reusable container like a growler or even a glass if they're in a bar or whatever. So we're looking more and more at bulk. At the moment we're dealing with kegs, but we are looking at other packages. And basically with bulk, it comes down to obviously the size of the container, but to be able to fill it easily and also to dispense it easily. And the beauty of the keg, of course, it's designed around a product that's already out there, that is already there for easy filling and easy dispensing.
Okay, thank you. Now, Jeff, you spoke about some PET technology, Daniel, some films and flexible. But what about what are some of the other materials being introduced, or maybe they're not introduced yet, but you see them on the forefront? New materials or barriers, or maybe even new sealing technologies, cap technology. Can you expand on that?
Well, there's been a lot of supply chain issues, as many are aware of. One of those, as far as the EVOH, it's very difficult to get. And so folks are wondering what to do. Well, we are experimenting, and we have a lot of EVOH options that may not require EVOH. For example, aluminum oxide, but historically aluminum oxide is a poor performer in HPP. because it actually degrades in the HPP process. So we're modifying the aluminum oxide so that it does perform through HPP. Really cool stuff. High barrier nylon is another one, and various other high barrier technologies that allow a producer to diversify and to have stability of supply when things like EVOA shortages happen.
Okay. Jeff, did you have anything?
Yeah, I was going to say, so we're getting a number of companies coming to us who are currently using EVOH because there's an anticipated kind of gap that's going to occur sometime towards the end of the year. And so from a PET standpoint, as it relates to HPP and the process, I mean, you have options around, EVOH is a superior oxygen barrier. Don't get me wrong there without any question, but there are other options. There are scavenging systems that will perform and, UV systems that will perform, as part of that and not have any impact on the recyclability of the system as well too, which is certainly one of the advantages of it. Now you might have to manage the shelf life piece of it in terms of the bottle component and so forth, but there are various passive and actives that can work with that. So I think there's lots of good options, and you're not restrained by any kind of design features, and it works with the process as well too.
Are there any measurable shelf life or safety benefits associated with any of these new developments?
Yeah, we have done with our product, for instance, we have barriers in the product for stopping CO2 leaving the product or O2 getting in. And actually there's O2 scavengers in there. And we have done studies, independent studies, basically with the VLB, which is the university in Berlin. And we look at shelf life over a period of time. And we basically find that we can get a shelf life of over 9 months from the product. So shelf life testing is done. Of course, it always comes down to the product that you're putting in and whether the product is clean. And this is the beauty of HPP, of course, is that once you put the product in here, you're basically sterilizing the product in the container. So we know that the product is good. And of course, then of handling is also an issue. Any container that you're going to use, if the product is affected by heat and you leave it in a heated condition, that's also going to affect it. But if with our product anyway, and I presume with most of them, if they're held good, then the shelf life is very, very good.
Thanks. So we ask packaging to perform a lot of functions. As we just discussed, safety and things like that. What about sustainability along with safety? I mean, where are we seeing the future? Jeff, I think you touched a little bit on recycling, but where are we seeing the future of the sustainability of packaging, the consumer friendliness? Obviously, a lot of discussion and pressure on both the retail and consumer side to have packages that are compliant and favorable and eco-friendly. Where's that going within our industry?
Well, I'll tell you, we've moved into a new era of thinking around sustainability. There was a time whenever it was primarily thought of in the context of my scorecard for sustainability for big companies. Now it's become a part of the brand essence itself and what it stands for and how people want their brands to be a net positive contributor to society and the environment. And so that's expanding things dramatically. Fortunately for PET and for our two-stage process, the introduction of post-consumer recycled resins in it is a good thing. I mean, it works very well and, we can deliver on that, but we're seeing this evolution of big companies promising significant amounts of recycled content in the coming years, which mostly is because of their kind of scorecard. But then we have a whole host of smaller companies that, like I said, are doing it because it's the right thing to do. And frankly, as a country, we need to recycle more of what we currently have out there. It's just that easy. And we can reuse that content over and over and over again. So I'm very optimistic about the future. And I'm equally optimistic because our two-stage kind of injection molding process is relatively immune to any issues when you use recycled content versus virgin content. We have lots of customers that are in that space. One caveat, and that is there are some kind of color changes that can occur. The container may be a little grayer and so forth. So we globally source our PET from the US and from outside the US, because there are countries like Japan, South Korea that have very clean sources and provide very nice quality products. With the only challenge being getting it on a boat and getting it here, and so forth. But we're working through that part of it. But I'm really optimistic about what the future holds as it pertains to what we can do. Now we need to have kind of the economic system of recyclability to put in place to help us and make it all available to HPP.
Daniel, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it has to work through HPP. We're at the HPP Cold Pressure Council conference, so it really doesn't matter how sustainable something is if it doesn't work through HPP. You can't use it, right? But I agree 100% with Jeff here. In the ideal world, you would have your ideal package the way you want it, 100% sustainable, 100% recyclable. When it comes to flexibles, it's a multi-layer film. It's very difficult to get recyclable because there's different structures in it. But I can share that a lot of progress is being made on that front. And we are perhaps a couple months away from releasing a fully recyclable lidding film, flexible film that would also work through HPP also. We're in the final stages of the test for that. Everything looks really good. So hopefully at the end of the day, you can have your cake and eat it too.
Great. And Andy, how about elaborating on?
It's always one of the biggest pushbacks we have when we come out with our products and we speak with a customer. A lot of our customers are, let's say, kombucha customers or cold brew customers who are very, very green in their operation. Now, the beauty of PET, really, there are a lot of advantages from a sustainability point. For instance, our kegs don't require any washing or sterilizing, so the reduction in utilities needed to actually use the product is immense. We also actually, some of our product can be recycled and reused direct, for instance, our chimes on our kegs. We are doing as much as we can with sustainability. We are using more. For instance, our chimes are from 100% recycled material, and our kegs, I think we use about 30%, and we're trying to increase that. We understand what the level is on sustainability. We talked about clear. Well, our kegs actually have to have a barrier for UV, but we are developing and have developed with other customers where we can produce a clear keg, where prior to filling, that there's a plasma that flashes in there and gives the barrier inside. It's like a solid barrier that goes inside. And then when the keg is actually recycled, that barrier dissipates. So instead of recycling a colored PET, which is harder to find people to take, it's a clear PET that's needed, can be used. What the whole thing is with PET is it is recyclable, but it comes down to whether it is recycled. And in Europe, of course, there's lots more use in local laws, etc., where more and more of plastic products are recycled. In the United States, every municipality has its own trash system or whatever. So it basically comes down to, yes, it is a recycled product and can be recycled. Whether it is or not, it's unfortunately out of our hands.
Well, no, I appreciate all three of you commenting on that, because I think that, obviously everyone in here is concerned about recycling and sustainability, and we're all going to deal with it, and it's the right thing to do. And so these comments from the three of you are real important, and hopefully your insightfulness helps everybody in the audience as they deal with their issues. Maybe changing gears a little bit here. So your thoughts on materials, packaging, barriers that might be beneficial towards specific applications. For example, Are there better materials for proteins? Are there unique materials for a salsa or beverages that you guys, from your experiences, would recommend to the group here?
Yeah, well, from a package standpoint, when I look at the applicability of PET for HPP products, it's more a matter of where the product functionally makes sense for a rigid container, I think, in anything, because it can adapt to HPP fairly readily. So we see typically liquids and viscous products in that way as being kind of, and mostly because of, you're either drinking out of it or you're serving out of it with a wide mouth container, and it makes a lot of good sense. I will add, though, that one of the important aspects to think through is the design of the package, not only for the brand, but the design that functions best in terms of throughput and capacity in the HPP systems that it's going through in that. Because at the end of the day, you want to get the design you want to have the product look great and be processed properly, but you also want it to be efficient going through the HPP processor, because that's a critical component of the cost and so forth. And those two can be married together in order to be efficient and effective in the final solution.
Sure. No, those are great points. We see that every day as an outsourcer, the more efficient we can be, obviously the better, and the better for our customers as well. Daniel?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to different types of foods and your selection of the materials, it really comes down to, like we talked before, it comes down to barriers. What kind of respiration rate you want or don't want. It comes down to marketing, and it comes down to functionality. How does it function through HPP? Is it reliable? What kind of leaker rates are you getting? As far as we're concerned, the only acceptable number really is 0. Sometimes people get this idea in their head that we've got an X leaker rate, that's the nature of the beast, that's what HPP is, we just got to kind of deal with it and build that into the cost. We say no. We say if you're anything higher than 0, then we need to talk. Then 0 is the goal. And so that's where the material selection, I think, comes into play. How does it transfer the HPP, the high pressure force, through the product in a successful way?
Great.
Well, I guess I'm more fortunate than most because I'm only really dealing with beverages. So we don't really have too much of a problem. There are we do have some issues with some beverages, more the acidity or whatever attacking certain parts of the product. And we generally test that, and we always encourage our customers to test. We always give them all the information we can as far as, different products that we've tested, like wine and coffee and so forth. But we always find that our customers, obviously, we're trying to sell a product, will all do their own testing. And in fact, with some products, they will test for well over a year before they'll actually go forward with it. Generally, we're dealing with people who are not already using plastic. So there's always this sort of concern that there's going to be some taste elements or something like that. And even whatever data we give them, they're going to do their own testing, and we assist them with that. But I guess I'm more fortunate. I'm not dealing with all the different products that these guys are dealing with. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. What about the channels, packaging for specific channels? Are packages being developed and barriers being developed for specific to retail or food service or direct to consumer? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the opportunity, is to look at the evolution of retail channels, club store, dollar store, traditional grocery, and really understand it's more a matter of size and function. So for example, if you kind of look at Costco as a channel of club stores, you find a lot of square containers in Costco that could be HPP and so forth. That's a pure function of their model of efficiency of how much per square foot and so forth. So you adapt your packages kind of around the needs of that marketplace so that you can make your product that's been HPP processed in that channel as efficient as you can, both to get it there and how it results on the shelf as well too. Daniel, any thoughts?
Yeah, and just along with what Jeff said, along with the efficiencies to consider, obviously Costco or something like that is considering their own efficiencies, but through HPP, understanding, okay, what is the vessel size in HPP that I'm in? Is there a way for me to optimize the shape or the design of the container so that I can maximize the throughput through HPP?
We find that with us that we try to look at the package not just as a package that we're selling. We try to sell a whole concept. So the keg to a lot of our newer customers like pressed juice companies, almond milk companies, cold brew coffee companies, the keg is a new product to them. Unlike a bottle or a can that they already know how to fill, filling a keg is a new concept to them. To a brewery, no problem. So we've spent a lot of time developing that side of it as far as being able to fill it. So we've designed machinery specifically for smaller volume customers that that would be using the keg and then HPPing it, a lot of pressed juice companies. We've also looked at on the dispense side. So we've actually developed little mini kegerators for our smaller kegs and so forth. So for us, because as I say, you know, if I'm dealing with a brewery, they know what a keg is, they know how to fill it, they know how to dispense it. But when you're dealing with some customers who are putting newer products into it, we have to handhold them all the way through it. And we then say it's not just a product, it's a concept, and it's something that has to be developed all the way through.
Thank you. So as we kind of start winding down here on our discussion, I'd ask all of you to maybe give your thoughts and respond to this. What recommendations would you each give to brands who are starting that long road, that transition from whatever their current processing is, their development into HPP?
You know, I would start with, you know, what is the packaging, the PET, in my case, PET two-stage kind of packaging supplier. What's our obligation to the process to make sure that the results are, you know, as Daniel said, zero defects. And so it's really about quality of manufacturing. It's really about, in our case, because we injection mold a preform that then is blown into a bottle, that injection molding process gives the highest calibration possible of quality sealing surface, then enables the flexible packaging supplier to marry with that as part of it. That's one dimension of it. And the second dimension of it is just good wall distribution overall of that. And these are just kind of table stakes from a manufacturing standpoint. But if I'm a brand owner, you know, I want to kind of make sure that I'm working with the highest calibrated neck I can possibly get, the best kind of consistent quality when it comes to sidewall distribution and so forth. So there aren't any kind of changes in terms of the shape of the package and so forth. And for brand owners, I think it's important to try to partner with, you know, the HPP industry and a group of processors like, you know, ourselves that are already working so that we can optimize the benefit of, you know, what the product's going to look like, how it's going to perform through HP processing, and guarantee that you get the quality that you need so that you can walk out of there with zero defects at the end of the day.
I would probably say to someone who is just getting started with HPP or thinking about HPP, and actually this would also apply to folks that have been using HPP for a while too. I'd probably sum it up by saying, don't be afraid. A lot of times our marketing may come to us and say, hey, look, here's our wish list. This is what we want to do. And even before we go search for packaging, we go, whoa, I don't know if that's going to work through HPP, and we start cutting down that wish list. My recommendation is come to us with your entire wish list, intact. What do you want to do? And then let us figure out how to make sure that works through HPP. There's so many advances. There's so many things that can be done now to make almost anything work through HPP. So don't be afraid. You can get that 0% leaker rate. That's the goal. And you can have your marketing the way you like it, the container the way you like it. So there's so many benefits to HPP that there's no need to compromise, to water down this side just to be able to get that.
To me, really, HPP talking to potential companies is opportunities. One of the biggest problems that, you know, anybody who produces a product has to be concerned is the quality of the product getting out there. The fact that HPP is not going to affect the taste of the product by heating it up or anything like that. It's going to give you a longer shelf life, which is a real worry to a lot of people, because when you send that product out and you may put what the date is that is the best date or whatever, it is often out of your hands. And if someone gets a bad product, it's going to reflect on you and not necessarily the people who sell it to you. It also gives you more opportunities as far as looking at different areas, say with bulk or something like that. So not only are you looking at, say, putting your product into a bottle or into a can, you can now put it into a keg or even a larger container, and you know that you're going to get good shelf life. So to me, it's all about opportunities, and you can increase your market share by looking at completely different areas that you would never think of marketing your product in.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Well, Andy, Daniel, Jeff, you know, thanks so much to all of you for, first of all, again, coming here and spending the time with us, for sharing your insights and your experiences with regards to packaging and how it relates to HPP, the compatibility and the opportunities out there. We really appreciate it. Should we open up to some questions now from the audience? Any questions for our panelists? Yes.
I mean, you have a keg up there, I assume that's beer. And how are you doing the high pressure pasteurization on that keg? Is it injecting air into the keg, or is the keg going into a chamber and being?
Okay, so the only thing that we do with the keg so that we can process it is, obviously the keg has a valve on it, and the valve has got springs that open it up. So we have developed plugs that are put on here to stop that happening. The product then goes directly into the HPP system, just as any other product would go in. And then the high pressure of the water is transmitted through the walls, and that kills it. Yeah. So for us, the only sort of development that we've really done is to develop a plug. Okay, it was quite easy, really. So it is better if it. Usually when you fill a keg, there is usually a little bit of air gas in there, which is called the head pressure, which is a balancing system. It will work either way. It will work. We've done testing with the keg completely full. Kegs, generally, you don't really want to be completely full, because that acts as a balancing system during transportation and all sorts of vibration. But it will work if it is completely full, or if it does have that little bit of air head pressure in there.
The reason why I ask is that in bottle pasteurization now, for most breweries, it's done in heat pasteurization.
That's right.
With hot water.
Right.
And are you guys working on ways to do that with high pressure pasteurization in bottles and cans, so that they don't implode?
Well, if you can do it, as long as it is a PET container, so it'd have to be a PET bottle. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Jeff, you brought up about the cooperation and coordination with the ultimate customer. There's been, I was at another part of the trade show earlier this week where a number of the consumer packaged goods firms said, we need to do the partnering earlier. We're not quite sure when to bring in your company.
Mhm.
The second part they said was, after we get underway, there seems to be a drop in communication that's hurting us. What have you experienced? What are you doing with your company, perhaps to address those two things?
Well, in general, as part of a new product development process, we've got a pretty rigid framework around how we communicate and the steps that we lay out in that. So we've kind of just take the burden of communication on our end, and and drive the customer, if you will. So that's really the best, because in many cases, they're not coming in as the technical expert. They're coming in as the brand owner and the brand expert. And so on our end, we're going to take ownership of all of those pieces and all that steps. And you're absolutely right. Keeping the communication up at each stage of it, having regular updates and communication with the customer is absolutely critical, because everybody's working on a timeline to get someplace, and so it's critical that we know where everybody is in that step. And I think that, to your point, in the upfront, bringing in the packaging company, the brand owner, and the processor is really what you need to have in the upfront, so that you can lay out the parameters and lay out the opportunities to be more efficient and more effective in the process overall. And I think it's so critical to get that framed up in the outset of any project. And everybody's more than happy to do that, because boy, if you can solve those issues and get those issues on the table kind of day one, it makes everything work much better.
Any more questions? All right. Well,
Yeah, so speaking specifically around injection molding for the purposes of making the preform, the injection molding process of the finish and of the threads is kind of, it can't vary. I mean, you've got a mold and you fill the mold with plastic, and it gives you a perfect landing surface, sealing surface, and thread surface. It's not that defects can't occur, but it is, out of all of the processes, it is clearly one of the better and more repeatable in terms of doing that. So that gets you the very start of the finish being the same height, the same width, a lot of consistency there, which is really what you need from a sealing surface standpoint. Does that answer your question? Okay.
One word for Daniel. Daniel, you mentioned that you're looking and working in some areas that involve new materials, new opportunities. Are you anticipating, are you projecting any issues with supply chain? Hey, we've got a solution here, but the exotic approach is going to have a problem with supply. It's not readily available, or it's going to be other issues that you have. Are you taking those into consideration as you're investigating?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tom. I'm sure everyone's well aware of the supply chain challenges around the world these days. I just read an article that Costco has reserved several container ships of their own for them to address their own supply chain issues. So this is a global issue, and fortunately, we have a global reach when it comes to the products that we manufacture and we supply. So what we have done is we have, throughout the pandemic, fortunately, we're able to be one of those suppliers that say we have not shorted our customers once. And we've done that. It hasn't been easy, it's been challenging, but we've done it through a lot of, I call it logistic acrobatics. A lot of the supplies have become regionalized or localized. So we don't have enough PET in our country to use for what we need. Why would I export it to you, for example? And so when you're able to tap into different sources of supply around the globe, As one goes down, another one goes up, we shift our focus and we pull from a different source. And so we stay flexible like that. And that's why we've been able to get through it the way we have. But the reason that we've been developing these new materials or these new products, plain and simple, we listen to the industry, we listen to the customers, and we hear what people want, and we respond to that. So everything we do today has been a direct result on someone saying, I want this. No one's doing such and such. Can you guys do it? And so then we react and we develop with all those supply chain things in mind. Thank you.
And a follow-up for both of you. One of the second items has been the qualification of backup suppliers. So you had to go and help your customers in the supply chain, but the backup suppliers may be ones that you don't utilize so much. What have you been doing in terms of qualifying them or assuring that they're meeting the qualifications that you and your customer require?
Well, from our, there's two ways to answer that. One is that certainly you want to have multiple sources and you want to have those multiple sources already qualified and readily available. That would be the first thing. And you may not be using both of them at the same time, but that would be one point of it. And then the second point from a manufacturing standpoint, you need to have redundancy. You need to have redundant capabilities at multiple sites that are capable of producing the same product so that you don't get caught with a one site only kind of option in that way. And if you do those two things, the only risks you have are around timing, how long it'll take to get there because of some kind of delay related to here or there. It doesn't put your quality at risk. It may put your timing at risk, but you know, that's manageable. I think Daniel said it perfectly with the logistical acrobatics that have been going on. You know, you can do those acrobatics. You can't do them every day, 7 days a week, but you can do them on those occasions where you need to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that having backup supply is very important, but also to keep the wheels greased, to have some level of motion, some level of activity. So that way, when you have to lean on them, it's a matter of increasing that flow rather than going from zero and starting it up. You've got the relationship there, you've got the orders there, you just have to make the orders bigger. So that's an easier hurdle to overcome than in a crisis situation saying, okay, we qualified you, we haven't bought from you, but we want to start. Meanwhile, they've got the same crisis situation with existing people that already buy. So that makes it a bit tough.
Okay. Well, guys, thanks again. Appreciate it. And I'm sure if anybody has any questions, maybe you can grab them after we finish up here. Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Jeff,
Thank you,
Daniel,
Tom.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.